You are not world champion, Boston Celtics. You are not world champion. You are only NBA champion. We are the EuroLeague champion. If you want to be world champion, come to play with us.
What would happen if the EuroLeague champions played against the NBA champions? That's something every European basketball fan is curious about, but I don't think we'll see that matchup anytime soon. Jason Tatum brushed it off saying, "I don't think about what ifs or hypotheticals," and basically said it's just a fun debate to have. But would the best of the EuroLeague be able to at least compete in the NBA? In this video, I'll take a look at 5 historical teams that I think could have. Starting with a Maccabi Tel Aviv squad that not only dominated Europe, but eventually shipped multiple players off to the NBA. The 04-05 Maccabi was a star-studded squad led by head coach Pini Gershon. They were fresh off a EuroLeague title the year before, so everyone was after them, but they still managed to repeat beating Tau Ceramica in the final, averaging well over 90 points per game. In Europe, that's a lot. Maccabi basically steamrolled most opponents with their high-tempo run-and-gun offense. The star power was outrageous. First of all, Anthony Parker, who some consider to be Kobe or Jordan of the EuroLeague. Parker was arguably the best two-way wing in Europe, whose athleticism was second to none. Then there was prime Šarūnas Jasikevičius, an elite scoring point guard who orchestrated the pick and rolls. Maceo Baston brought athleticism and rim protection, while Nikola Vujicic added inside scoring and brilliant passing for a big man. And as if that wasn't enough, Derek Sharp and Tal Burstein gave them even more perimeter firepower. They also bagged the Israeli Premier League title and the State Cup, completing a triple crown for a second year in a row. So if you drop that Maccabi team into the 2004-05 NBA, how would they fare? Their up-tempo style was unique in Europe at the time, but ironically it fit right into the pace that Steve Nash's Phoenix Suns were pushing in the NBA. They had multiple guys who later proved they could translate to the league. Parker became a starter in Toronto, Jasikevičius briefly played for the Pacers and the Warriors, while Baston followed Jasikevičius to Indiana and later joined Parker in Toronto. Sure, they might have lacked a bit of a front-court depth after Vujicic, but no question they had a starting 5 that could compete. My guess, I think they would be around a 35-win squad, maybe flirting with a 500 record if they were in the weaker Eastern Conference. Next up, I have one of the most legendary rosters ever with Panathinaikos in 08-09. We're talking about one of the most polished, disciplined, and relentlessly defensive sides Europe has ever seen. They were coached by none other than Jelko Obradovic, who has more EuroLeague trophies than most clubs do. That year, Pau sealed a triple crown too, snagging the Greek Cup, the Greek Basketball League, and the EuroLeague. Roster-wise, this team had an insane backcourt. Dimitris Diamantidis, who that year won his 5th consecutive Best Defender award in the EuroLeague, was also a brilliant playmaker. Vasilis Spanoulis, an explosive scorer who was known for big shots at clutch moments. And Jasikevičius popping up again, this time a bit older, but still a lethal shooter and a playmaker. Their front court was no less impressive. First, Mike Batiste, who revolutionized what a center is with his athletic finishing and ability to switch on defense, and Nikola Pekovic with his brute force in the paint. Pek would later be a 17-point-per-game guy in the NBA, by the way, so they had a front court that could definitely match up with a lot of NBA bigs. Fotis was the stretch 4 who had tested waters in Memphis prior, and Drew Nicholas provided some perimeter scoring. Depth, talent, and an extremely disciplined system. It all clicked. Would that system have translated in the NBA's 82-game marathon back in 2008 when physicality was still quite present? I think so, especially with that super versatile frontcourt, the three-headed monster in the backcourt, and their depth. Sure, Diamantidis might have not played in the NBA, but his 6'5" or 196cm size, IQ, and defensive instincts could handle plenty of NBA guards at the time. Spanoulis had a brief, forgettable stint in Houston, but that was partly a mismatch of style and opportunity. In a hypothetical scenario where Obradovic's system is allowed to flourish, I see them also as a 500 or better squad. Maybe something like 42-43 wins in the East, anchored by top-tier defense capable of surprising teams that rely heavily on isolation. Sure, they would struggle to handle the likes of LeBron or Kobe, I mean, who didn't? But they would hold their own against many rosters lacking that superstar punch. Fast forward transfer to Real Madrid in 2017-2018. A squad best remembered for a 19-year-old Luka Doncic who snagged MVP honors in the EuroLeague, Final Four, and ACB all at once. They overcame injuries for much of that season and beat Fenerbahce in the EuroLeague final. Luka orchestrated everything, from pick and rolls to step-back daggers, while guys like Rudy Fernandez, Facundo Campasso, Sergio Llull, Anthony Randolph, and Gustavo Ayón supplemented him perfectly. Their head coach's Pablo Lasso's approach was reminiscent of what many NBA squads value right now: pace, ball movement, and perimeter shooting. We all know how Doncic's game translated once he hit Dallas. Instant stardom, triple-doubles, and Rookie of the Year award. So imagine that same young, in-shape Luka leading a Real Madrid squad that also had proven NBA-level role players. Fernandez had stints in Portland and Denver. Anthony Randolph was an athletic freak during his NBA days. Walter Tavares, even though his NBA career was brief, provided elite rim protection standing at 7'3". It's not crazy to think that they would match up well against teams that lack defensive anchors to contain Luka. Overall, this team was one of the most stacked EuroLeague squads ever, having 6 players with NBA experience plus 2 who would play there in the future. With their extensive depth, I would expect this Real Madrid to collect 40 to 45 wins. At worst, they're around 500. At best, I think they're pushing for a 6th seed, to be honest. Fourth team I picked is Anadolu Efes Istanbul from the 2020-21 season, the team that finally got its EuroLeague title. They were the clear favorites before COVID-19 cut off the 2019-20 season, and the next year they picked off where they left off. A dynamic backcourt is the story here. Vasilije Micic was unstoppable and won both the EuroLeague MVP and the Final Four MVP, orchestrating the offense, while Shane Larkin completed the 1-2 punch with his incredible ISO plays. Coach Ergin Ataman gave them the green light to shoot from anywhere and run unstoppable guard sets. It's basically a modern NBA approach. Heavy pick and roll usage, big men who can stretch the floor like Chris Singleton or Tibor Pleiss, plus a rim protector in Brian Dunstan. And they had experienced wings like Krunoslav Simon and Rodrigue Beaubois who spaced the floor and attacked closeouts. How does that style translate to the NBA? Very well, I would argue. In an era when every team values spacing and guards who can create off the bounce, Efes matched that blueprint. Micic is currently in the NBA, although I would argue he would have had a bigger role during his EuroLeague MVP year than right now. Larkin already proved that he could compete in the NBA, as he had previously played for the Knicks, Nets, and Celtics. Singleton and Beaubois had 3-4 years of NBA experience too. The challenge would be the upscaling of athletic wings in the NBA, but their spacing and the open-minded offensive approach could be enough on some nights to beat mid-level NBA squads. Out of the 4 teams I mentioned, I feel like this squad would have the most issues with depth, as Ataman likes to use a 7 to 8 man rotation. So all in all, I would give them 30 wins total in an 82-game schedule. Finally, we come back where we started. Panathinaikos of the 2023-24 season, the star-studded squad under Ergin Ataman. Yes, the same coach who led Efes and issued a challenge to the Boston Celtics. Pau somewhat surprisingly came out on top in the EuroLeague final against the favorites Real Madrid, who were dominating throughout the regular season. They assembled a deep roster featuring ex-NBA names like Kendrick Nunn, Juancho Hernangomez, Jaren Grant, Kostas Antetokounmpo, plus EuroLeague's elite of Kostas Sloukas and Matthias Lesort. Sloukas in particular that season had come over from Olympiacos, their arch-rival, and claimed the EuroLeague Final Four MVP with his clutch shooting and playmaking. Nobody could contain Lesort inside the paint the whole season, while Nunn went absolute beast mode in big moments. They also recaptured the Greek League crown, reasserting themselves over the rivals Olympiacos. So, could this new Panathinaikos go toe-to-toe with the Boston Celtics? I mean, I'm European, but I have to stay realistic and say not really. But against middling NBA teams from last season, I would say it's possible. You already have multiple guys who know the NBA lifestyle. Nunn was on that Heat squad that reached the finals in the bubble, Jaren Grant spent 4 years in the league as a rotation guard, and Juancho had stints from Denver to Toronto. On top of that, the entire system is structured for pick-and-roll action and floor spacing with decent defensive potential. Ataman's bread and butter. The only issue, just like with Efes, is the lack of depth, especially when it comes to the front court. I would see them as an under 500 team with like 30 to 35 wins. But let me know what you think of these teams' chances in the NBA. Were there any better historical EuroLeague teams I didn't mention? Drop those thoughts in the comments below. Also check out our second channel outside the NBA, and I'll see you in the next one.